everyone. I'm here with our third broadcast of Solution for People's Management. I'm here with a dear friend and basically an industry leader, Dawn Dzurilla. She is the founder of Gaia Human Capital. She has been in executive search for over 25 years. And so Dawn has a very interesting background. She comes from Wall Street and investment banking and hedge funds. So she has a very unique journey. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dawn. And Dawn, I'm very honored to have you here today as a guest. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey from hedge fund, investment banking, Wall Street, and now to Gaia Capital.
Thanks, Mary, and I'm honored to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me. The journey goes back considerably longer than my not illustrious career is what I'm looking for at on Wall Street. Goes back, if you would like me to share a little bit about my growing up background. I come from the New York City area and a suburb of New York City. Well, I was born in a very ethnic part of Brooklyn. We moved out to the suburbs when I was very young, and it was through that working class family that I had that I learned the need to be resilient and strong and competitive and do all the things I needed to do. After school, I should say actually during college, I was extremely involved in different student activities, was elected to an executive board. I was the treasurer of my student government. And that kind of set me on a path of two different directions. It was either I was going to go into politics, which I still very much have a passion for, or I was encouraged to begin working immediately by my working class, a hardworking dad. And lucky for me, because of my student government engagement, I landed a job on Wall Street. And that's kind of where it began.
On the Wall Street, I imagine the Wall Street that you work in, I just always remember like the Michael Douglas Wall Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. That's a very exciting 80s Wall Street. So give us a little taste of how was it actually to work in Wall Street back then?
Pretty tough. It's a very, very male-dominated, some might say overly fueled environment. A lot of testosterone, a lot of, as Michael Douglas said, greed is good. That's kind of, yeah. Ironically, it's very funny. His office on Wall Street was an office it was the actual office of a client of mine.
Wow.
And he kept the name plaque. This person was the CEO of a very major financial institutions trade association back then. And I remember he did not have his name plaque there, but he had, I think it was Gordon Gekko. Was that his name? It was always a really funny thing. Anyway, so I actually sat in that office itself many times as
lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, then move forward. You started Gaia, which at the time it was the I think was it 2007 or am I wrong?
Correct. Yes.
2007, you start Gaia. And if you could give us our viewers what Gaia means and what what your firm does, and why did you see like Gaia as an important next steps after exciting career in hedge fund and Wall Street?
It's a good question. Well, not everything is kind of a linear progression. There are many times we go through challenges in our personal and professional life, and I'm certainly not immune to that. In my professional career, which very much matches my personal career, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs would agree with me, I saw an opportunity back then to drive significant talent, significant leadership talent, I should be further to say this, to this very important, very emerging segment of society that we needed to build. What a lot of folks may not realize is that immediately prior to Gaia, I co-founded a socially responsible impact investment firm. And it's there that I learned and had an epiphany that said you could do well by each other and by the planet and do good. Okay, I'll reverse that for a second. You could do well. I mean, you can make money and you could do good by people and planet, if you will, what we call the triple bottom line: people, planet, profits. With that, we were off to the races. But the reality was that particular alternative investment firm, we were essentially way ahead of the curve. We're talking the early 2000s. And we were really unable to make it happen, which was unfortunate.
It is.
And then I was at a crossroads and I thought, well, now what? So I thought, well, I could go back into executive search, but I'm not going to continue to make millionaires billionaires, which is frankly what I did. And from that, I just made a little bit of money and I took that risk. And I again thought, no, it's my passion now, my deep hope that we can create a future where every person could be, if you will, a bold agent of such positive change. And I was going to do my part. As either I'm not an engineer, I don't develop these technologies, but I am a communicator. I felt that I was able to contribute in my own way to drive progress in this community.
Great.
So Gaia was started. Now, Gaia, for those who don't know, is Mother Earth in Greek mythology. And it was kind of a bit of a branding. I was inspired through a couple of different ways by calling it Gaia, which was very presumptuous of me to call my practice after Mother Earth herself.
It's kind of related, right? They kind of go.
It's extremely related. Yeah, it's extremely related. And over the years, some have said, wow, I get it. But, it's interesting. Well, I've always been an environmentalist and certainly believe in the passion of why we're doing this. I've also realized over the decades that this is a very special appeal to me. And it's really more that I was going to lend my voice to the conversation, which was going to be more than just the planet, that you can't separate the planet from people, being someone of a diverse background myself. And so that really emboldened my passion and my hard work to work with really countless leaders that were equally dedicated to building a more sustainable and equitable world. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity to have been one of the early adopters in this space.
It's wonderful. So,
and I think you're going to ask this.
yeah, so I'm just really curious. So, getting people really at the time, which, this wasn't very popular, it was up and coming. So as a leader in this space, how did you how did you collaborate? How did you bring people onto the table to really see the value of clean energy and Mother Earth and all the wonderful things that corporations and environmentalists can do together?
You bet. It was quite a journey, to say the least. One of the things about me that's a little different is I've always prided myself on my storytelling and performative skills. I've always enjoyed public speaking, storytelling, engaging with an audience, if you will. I've always felt that this is an asset of mine that I continue to use today. I've always thought that leaders should have that skill set. I think a leader, if you will, someone who's going to be bold and take this risk, needs to be a great communicator. I think the ability to command the room, to articulate a clear vision through a variety of ways that we express ourselves. I'm not always clear, but I try to speak with conviction. The job that I had was to communicate that passion, that bold vision that our clients had. My ability to kind of tap into their own passion and share their vision. Again, some of that Wall Street background I had, of course, is all due diligence, deep dive, understand the market, understand the conditions and challenges that these technologies face, the financial risk that so many of these organizations were undertaking, etc., and accepting the fact that I was able to communicate the good and the bad, the positive and the negatives in what our clients faced. I think I was very authentic in inspiring action to connect with people to help them understand why they should consider this whole new career track, why they should leave a particular industry. This is early on, right? When there weren't many folks in the renewable energy, clean energy space.
Yes.
Why they should consider taking action. So a lot of this, I had to use elements of my own background, my own, I'm going to say it very delicately, my own skill set in motivating these people to consider doing this and celebrating the success stories of my clients and also being very transparent with some of their failures, with celebrating the success of the broader community that we're trying to build with great purpose of this very important space, this what I call green economy. And yet, think again, while we're kind of celebrating that, to again consider both opportunity and continue to think about how do we continue to enhance the technology itself? How do we build policy around this? How do we create a larger community of people to adopt technology, purposeful technology? How do we get buy-in from society? And we were doing really well there for well over a decade.
That's
Again, we saw the...
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry?
So I was just going to say that sounds like a journey with many hurdles and resistance. But, I'm impressed. You and all your colleagues have hanged in there and were able to overcome all those resistance. Can you tell us in your journey of really getting people to buy into clean technology and seeing the benefits and the values, how did were there some days that you wanted to give up and say, I'm going to throw in the towel and that this is not going to work. I'm not going to have enough people supporting this cause. And if so,
Yes.
how did you go beyond that?
Yes, thank you for that. That's an interesting question. For those who are engaged in this industry, we have learned the term solar coaster. Yes, the solar coaster. Now, 2008 particularly was a very challenging year for all of us in the space. The major issue that we were always faced with early on as well were that we never had long-term, beyond a year, policy. And when I say policy, I'm talking about investment tax credits. I'm talking about federal policy, state and local policy that essentially just builds a level playing field. You see, there's always been, for several decades now, there's always been very favorable policy in the carbon burning, i.e. oil and gas, coal. There's always been very favorable policy for those industries, very strong lobbying efforts. The clean energy sustainability space, we really had to work hard for that. So early on, I joined everything. This is an important point I should have mentioned, perhaps. Maybe it's not too late. But early on, to think of myself as a thought leader in this space, I took a page out of securities analysis and I began to say, how do I distinguish myself from other executive search consultants? And in doing so, I kind of dove into learning a lot about every aspect of what I need to know. Okay, now to answer your question, it was with that kind of knowledge that I had developed about this industry space that made me realize that if I can't do this, no one's going to do this. The big challenge was, will these organizations continue to accelerate their growth? Will investors continue to pour monies into these otherwise nascent early stage technologies? Will the limited partners of these venture capital private equity firms, will they continue to want to take the risk? These were very important questions. Will we lose? Will we lose the momentum? We knew at this point, 2008, that the technology seemed to work. But what we did not have was a long-term strategy that'll incentivize the markets to invest in this space and the public to adopt these technologies. Now, I'm talking mostly right now about renewable energy, and this is kind of where my background grew from. It was understanding the solar markets, the wind energy markets, the geothermal markets, the tidal power markets, the run of the river, as we call it, one of my early clients. Some fascinating organizations that I began to get involved with. I was very early on involved in one of the very first executive search consultants in the American Council on Renewable Energies, known as ACOR. I was very honored to be amongst some of the very leading entrepreneurs, policymakers, investors in the space, most of which have gone on to do some really great and important things. I'm thinking right now about a handful of them that have really it's quite fascinating. Along the way, I also was very honored to have been named one of the national chairs at the Clean Tech Open, which was accelerating and offering counsel to entrepreneurial technologies engaged in the clean tech space. By the way, if I may just share this with a lot of folks, clean tech, the term clean tech came from a group of investors. It was essentially named that as an asset class to distinguish the investment from other technologies. Today, we refer to clean tech as climate tech, decarbonization, sustainability, ESG, environmental social governance. And again, you can't, as I mentioned earlier, you can't leave out the social aspect without the environmental aspect. Now, I know I'm getting far flung here, Mary. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
But you see, though, what kept me going during this period of time was learning everything I can, self-teaching myself about all of this. I knew nothing about this in college. I knew nothing about this growing up, looking at the financial institution space. When I say I'm talking about Wall Street, investment management, mutual funds, so on and so forth, my historic background. I had a little taste of this early on when I was engaged with a client, one of the very first medical waste management technology firms back in the early 90s. Medical waste began washing up on the shores of New Jersey. And who knew, from that spawned this entire new industry on how do we get rid of medical waste. So you'd walk along a New Jersey shore and you'd find sharps and needles and what's going on here? And folks somehow discarded their stuff in the ocean, and it would, of course, wash up on shore. Well, I discovered something very interesting when I worked with these brilliant entrepreneurial people. Back then we had, there was one major way to get rid of medical waste, and this was you incinerate it. You put it in an oven and it gets the smokestack and it all comes flying out and it's gone. And I learned the word NIMBY back then, not in my backyard. And having a political background, I thought, okay, I get it. But interesting enough, people back then did not want to see a smokestack in their neighborhood. No one seemed to care what came out of that smokestack. They just didn't want to see. It was a blight in their neighborhood, right? No one wanted to see the smokestack. And I kept asking, what's coming out of that smokestack? Today, we think about what's coming out of these coal plants, right? These coal burning or these natural gas. And is from that, of course, spawned a whole industry of decarbonization. Okay.
That's
Well,
impressive.
yeah.
So you started out in an industry which was pretty new and you got involved, you used your communication, collaboration skills to get by in. Now, tell us a little bit about your firm, Gaia Capital. And if I'm not wrong, I've seen your posts about working with the Fortune 500, being like a number one leader in when it comes to social impact, environment. So tell us a little bit more about Gaia, where it is and what it does today.
Thank you for asking. Gaia Human Capital Consultants, so Gaia Human Capital is a retained, and to your audience, I'll try to explain that, meaning that we are hired by organizations, whether they be Fortune 50 companies or higher educational institutions, nonprofit, NGOs, universities, more entrepreneurial, regardless where they are in their commercialization phase. We're hired by them essentially to build out their management teams, build out their executive management teams, their leadership teams. And we have partnered with them in helping them attract the right talent, not just any talent, but the right talent. We don't place people. There's a very important distinction. We don't place people. We are very transparent partners. I don't tell partners what they want to hear. I tell them what they should hear. Again, kind of part of this authentic style that I have, I think.
Yes.
And we work very, very, very closely with them and spend a lot of time really understanding what their challenges are, really trying to understand the right person they need in filling this very, very important gap. Now, all of these clients, in one way or another, are very purpose-driven organizations. And I'd like to think that we do solve their client challenges. Their client I would say climate challenges. Their client challenges in this rapidly evolving and very at times rather distinctive climate tech space.
Can
So
you
I like to think of I like to think of ourselves as kind of a strategic partner, providing both high level counsel and yet having, pretty flawless execution and leveraging our network and our obviously deep industry knowledge and all of the advanced technology that's available to us today, including obviously AI,
yeah,
which helps us accelerate the
so give us
process.
an example of the type of clients that without you don't need to disclose the name, but what kind of, what industry and what are they looking for, and how do you, as an authentic leader, bring that honest conversation to the table? And, at the end of the day, how does, you mentioned the word social impact. How do you see social impact playing a role with your authentic leadership? Because I can imagine that being very important, making a huge impact on the environment, on the society as a whole.
That's a good question there. Well, first and foremost, we try to deliver a wider and more diverse talent pool, a much wider, more diverse talent pool, ensuring that the organization gets a good look at exceptional leaders, regardless who they are. That'll help their organization thrive. We pride ourselves, and I want to talk about this a little bit. It's really important that we also deliver every search we do a very diverse talent pool. I think that also gives us a bit of a competitive edge. Furthermore, a good example of our client, thank you for asking. Boy, there are a lot of them. Let me just think which one I really want to draw from. Some of my favorite searches. There's a lot of them. Here's a really interesting story. Years ago, one of our first clients somehow found themselves with terrible press in the New York Times. Overblown terrible press that their technology failed. Oh my goodness, what a failure. Terrible. This is one of the real pioneers, true pioneer in this particular renewable energy technology. Well, they had real trouble recruiting their brand new chief financial officer. They had trouble recruiting what was to become their next CEO. Of course, I was involved in these situations. They had trouble bringing on board a new head of technology, chief technology officer. And I had to assure them that don't hide this from me. Let me know, because there are a lot of candidates out there who pride themselves, who are experts at turning around these types of organizations, that are able to, through their passion, through their change management, through their saying, yeah, it failed. But, guess what? We're taking all the steps right now to redo everything. And here's why. Let's not lose sight of the fact of why we're going to continue to work on this to refine our technology with purpose and with best in class people. And it worked. And I remember as I would talk about with clients, they'd say, oh, I read about them. I'd say, listen, your job right now is to change that narrative. What experience have you had in talking about organizations that have received bad press, that have gone through difficult times and very public displays of leadership failure? We read about scandal. We read about all types of, and this whole renewable energy space, for example, and it continues to go through. It doesn't work, and how doesn't it work, and why should it work? And it causes cancer and all this false narrative. We continue to need people that are going to successfully tell the right story with passion and purpose, that are going to both attract money and going to attract human capital talent. So that's one of my favorite stories of a different type. Another type, I had a client, leading university in the South, but they got it. They really embrace sustainability in a part of the country that says there's no such thing as climate change. and a part of the country that says, oh yeah, well, there's flooding in our backyard and the tides are rising and it's still a hoax. Really interesting. Well, anyway, long story short, they decided that they were, I'm talking about two different universities right now. They decided, one said that we're going to be a center of excellence. We want to build an academic excellence, having a chair of a renewable energy program that will, a scholarship, if you will, that will increase the university's capacity to teach students, empower students with a curriculum to go into this field, which is incredibly interesting. We did a national search for essentially a preeminent scholar, the chair of this brand new department. By the way, there was a governor who was very oppositional to all of this at the time, but we still did well. Again, why? I always come back to the question, why are we doing this? Our other university client said, we want to take the resources of a university that we have and showcase this and bring this to the regional economy throughout the Carolinas and Georgia and Florida, and work with organizations, wherever they are, corporations, and say, we've got students, we have academic excellence, let's go out and help you to build a community of sustainability.
As you are So that's very interesting. So as you're building these new, like forging the way, really being pioneers in whether it's in universities or corporation, you touched upon diverse search. Can you tell us how do companies and your search benefits from diversity of thoughts, diversity of people? How really that's beneficial to is a win-win for all parties involved?
It is. And let me just back up for 1 second. We also have 3 clients in the built environment. Picture two steel companies were clients of ours.
Wow, okay.
Decarbonizing steel. The other was in New York State to decarbonize every building in New York State. That was the mandate. That is the mandate.
Okay.
Imagine that. Okay. And by the way, women candidates in all these roles fill these roles, which is extraordinary. It was a plastic and pulp manufacturer. Fascinating. Why? Why diversity? Our consumer base are diversity, right? I'm a big believer that if there's not room at the table for you to bring your own chair, that's always been my life story.
Mm.
Been a lot of our life story. The boardroom, we knew who they were. We still know who they are. I hear my voice in the background. There are many reasons. There are numerous reasons why we need to have a more diverse and inclusive leadership in society. I think what's very important to realize is that when we execute these searches, we do this with purpose and we purposely identify these candidates. In other words, not that we always look for the best candidate. Don't get me wrong, but we say to ourselves, it would be nice also to kind of elevate a community of those that have historically been disenfranchised. And then you identify for yourself how you define diverse communities. And diversity means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
That's right.
Does that help answer this?
Yes, that's excellent. So for any new, college graduate or anyone like yourself who was in mid-career who wants to, transition to this new space of green energy and social impact, what is your what is your advice to them? How can they come without knowing anything and really, like you said, you mentioned you join organization, really getting involved. And I know some people really at the end of the day really care and want to make an impact. So what would be your advice to them as a leader in this industry?
A good question. You have to keep learning. It takes more. I was asked recently, does an environmental science degree matter? It does, of course. It's a good start. But frankly, we need people from every perspective, every background to be part of this community, this industry, this wider community. So whether you're an accountant or an attorney or a human capitalist or an investor or a partnership executive, I consider myself that too, or even a chair of a nonprofit, we need everyone with the whole wide diversity of talents. So you don't necessarily have to have a role that's going to impact decarbonization. So let's say you are a cost accountant. Cost accountants could very quickly get involved in looking at accounting or looking at decarbonization scope 1, 2, 3. You could also look at supply chain issues. You could look at project finance. You can concentrate on project finance. In other words, and I'm just talking about accounting right now, if you're an attorney, you could look at policy as it pertains to this space. But I think most importantly, you've got to ask yourself continuously why. And if you don't get it, even if you're a CEO, you have to understand that the people that you are going to be working with do get it. These are very passionate people. These are people who want to do something which is going to sound very simple, but they want to change the world. I want to change the world. Right? We would want to have that impact on the world. To answer more specifically your question, every one of us can have an opportunity to contribute in our own way to bring our skill set, our educational background, and our passion to make a difference.
That's great. So everybody can get, it's a cause everybody can get involved in. So at the end
Yeah.
of the day, people, I mean, if their passion is planet Earth and preserving planet Earth, they should basically roll up their sleeve. And from what I hear is they're passionate people that can support them along the way.
Well, it's not just a bright light on planet Earth.
Mhm.
It's also about, doing right for people as well.
Okay.
We spend a lot of time, and early on, I talked a lot about technology and driving financial capital and policy, and everybody did. At ACOR, they talked a lot about that, but we didn't spend nearly enough time talking about the people who were going to make this happen. You could have the most brilliant panel technology, but without a skilled workforce to manufacture, install it, maintain it, let alone the leadership team to commercialize it, to market it, to brand it, etc. It's just a great idea and not much more than that. So the true bottleneck, again, in this green transition, if you will, it's not about the lack of money necessarily. It's really about the lack of talent, and it's about a lack of diverse, skilled workforce talent. And then I define the workforce as both blue-collar economy, blue-collar going to green-collar, and Van Jones, who I've known for a number of years, wrote a terrific book called The Green Collar Economy. And I looked at taking people from white collar to green collar. The real challenge today is to build these teams from the C-suite right down to the factory floor, from the boardroom right down to the roof of your home, from the C-suite to, again, a more intentional focus to train these people and train them well. Again, the key here is to really accelerate the transition to really a call of action.
Okay. Great, Dawn. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
That's
doing my
wonderful. No, so we are getting to the end, but the one question that I love to ask every guest is, how do they balance their leadership, their work in the industry with work-life balance? Because at the end of the day, that's also important part of a life of a leader. So how do you do that from your perspective?
That's a great question. Well, you might be aware of this, and maybe some of your listeners are aware of this. I'm also very honored to serve as the chair of StartOut. I'm the chair, actually, of San Francisco StartOut, the largest chapter of a national organization that brings together LGBTQ investors and LGBTQ entrepreneurs and folks that are both very passionate and really very brilliant. I derive great satisfaction of working with an exceptional team. Our board is 12 people, including myself, and I find it to be a lot of fun with a lot of purpose, bringing people together to build programs throughout the country, throughout our great Bay Area community. I'm also honored to serve as a board member of the San Francisco Gay Softball League, and I'm very, very happy to say that San Francisco will hosting the 2027 Gay World Series, which is a great honor for us as a community. I still play softball. I still attempt to stay in shape and do the best I can as a competitive athlete. For those who may not have caught on, I am relatively competitive. I think you know that about me. This is certainly one way that I relax, one way that I enjoy life and try to both contribute and try to stay as active as I can. I'm also, as many people are aware, I'm still very involved in politics. I stepped down this year after serving on the boards of the United Democratic Club, serving as a delegate to our state senator for a number of years, serving also on the boards of one of the oldest LGBTQ Democratic Club in the country. But again, I think my goal, it's a passion of mine to stay engaged, whether it be SFGSL. I'm also on the board of this media company. I'm on the advisory board of a solar energy community solar firm. You see, this is how I try to stay.
Well, that's great. It seems like outside of Gaia, you also keep busy with other local activities within the community. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
That's where you also get more joy, being involved in different community activities. I want to say thank you so much, Dawn, for taking the
Thank
time
you.
out of your busy schedule and telling us all the wonderful things you have done from Wall Street to Gaia. It was a pleasure having you, and I hope you come back as our guest again. And also, if for our viewers, if they want to reach out to you and, hire Gaia, how can they contact you?
Thanks for asking. First, my last name is Slovakian. Everybody tends to be confused by that. The D in my last name is silent. I could be reached at Dawn, DAWND, at Gaia Human Capital.com. And certainly go to our website, which is GaiaHumanCapital.com. I also invite those who might be interested to follow me on LinkedIn. Please get involved and start out if you're so inclined. We need to continue to overcome these systematic barriers to create a much more resilient society. We didn't talk about this, Mary, but today more than ever. And maybe next time we'll talk more about that. And again, I want to hear from people that really want to intentionally elevate and bring their brilliance where they might have been overlooked over the years to create a more fair and more incredible source of talent and innovation that's really essential in building, thank you, Mary, in building a more sustainable and equitable society today, 10 minutes from now, and future that we all need to survive. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Don. Your viewpoint on authentic leadership and making impact is really important, and I'm sure all of our viewers will benefit from it. Thank you again, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank
Take good
you.
care.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.